Right, thank you. Good evening, members. My first comment is that I'm not wearing this, which was given to me by the British Legion. It's too big to wear, but it's so beautiful. I brought it in to show you. Thank you. Right, welcome to the council meeting. It's the 30th of October, and item 1 on the agenda is going to be prayers. If I might ask the chaplain, thank you.
Almighty God, from whom comes every good and perfect gift, grant to all those who hold office in this borough the spirit of justice and of truth, of wisdom and charity, that mindful of their responsibility and of the needs of those they serve, they may promote the true welfare of all your people and advance your kingdom on earth, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
We pray together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, for ever and ever. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Would you like to be seated? Thank you. Whoops. God. Right, thank you, members. We'll go straight away to item 2 on our agenda, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We've had an apology from Councillor Mrs Darren Wilkes and Councillor Mrs Spittle.
And yes, Councillor Nottage.
Madam Mayor, I'm going to have to leave early this evening. I thought I'd give you notice.
Thank you, Councillor.
Can I?
Yes, thank you. Wait a minute. Councillor Jones, for some reason your microphone is on. Can you turn it off? Thank you. Right. Councillor Bath, I'm so sorry.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Just to say that Councillor Grace is running late due to the traffic and she will be here.
Oh, gosh. Yes, I'm afraid that could be said of all of us, couldn't it? Right, so that's...
And Councillor Watts gives his apologies.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bath. Right. Item 3 on the agenda, declarations of interest by members. Has any member got a declaration of interest in this agenda? I think that's a no. Item 4, the minutes. To confirm as a correct record the minutes of the meeting from the 4th of September 2018. Can I have a proposer for the minutes and a seconder for the acceptance of the minutes of this meeting?
Madam Mayor, happy to propose that we accept the minutes as set out on the agenda this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Flood. Councillor Jameson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Happy to second.
Thank you. Members, can we vote to accept these minutes? Is that everybody? No abstentions?
No. It's carried.
Thank you. That's carried. Thank you very much. No abstentions and no objections. Announcements. Right, I think this is my announcements first. I've had to go over the page, but don't panic because it's in big writing. We've had a lot of events. We've been very, very busy since September, and you'll see from the sheets with your agenda. So I'm only going to mention a few things. We had the great pleasure of a twin town visit to Arlen, and we met representatives from our other twin towns. It was very good to see how well Christchurch is regarded by these twin towns, and indeed how much some former mayors have done for the wonderful relationship. And I might say that an evening with Mayor Geary was mentioned quite favourably, so that clearly went down very well. Several other names, I'm not going to embarrass everybody here. And students from Arlen came over later in the month of September, and we gave them a short talk on the work of the borough. On a more serious note, I've represented the council at ceremonies to mark the occasion of the century which has passed since the end of the First World War. One of those ceremonies was a figure of a silent sailor, and in fact we were all surprised that they did a silent sailor. We knew there was a silent soldier, and it was very apposite. It was unveiled on Barrack Road with a very short service, but very touching and dedicated, I think I might dare say, to the senior service, although there are plenty of people that will quibble with that. The council provided a silent soldier, which is the more usual memorial. That's in the Rose Garden in the Priory, and that too was dedicated with a very short service and a special mention of the first 2 Christchurch men to fall in action. And they were killed, the first 2 Christchurch men killed in France and Flanders on the 20th and the 22nd of October 1914. So you can imagine that was shocking in those days. And I think I will give you the names. There was Sergeant William Amos Watts, and he was with the 1st Battalion Grenadier Guards. And then on the 22nd, Captain Hugh Irving Hartford of the Cheshire Royal Regiment was killed. And our officer, Wilbert, as we all know, he's investigated the background to all the ancient boroughs' losses during World War I. And he sourced all these names and details, which is very, very interesting. He's done a lot of work on it. We're going to hear them when we light the beacon. That's on Remembrance Sunday. Beacons are going to be lit all over the country, so as will be on the quay. I think, we'll have to check, I think it's at 6 o'clock on the quay on the 11th, so I hope many of you will manage to attend that. Another note about Remembrance Sunday, which I've been asked to either tell or remind, is that those of us who usually go to Highcliffe for the 3 o'clock ceremony, we've been told that it's been moved to 10 o'clock in the morning. So clearly no 3 o'clock ceremony. And also, can I remind councillors that you need to make your plans for attendance at the Priory service known if you haven't. Apparently some of you haven't. And the last item that I need to tell you about is that on the 6th of November we have a briefing about parish councils for all councillors, because the councillors initially will be responsible for the formation of the parish councils and the town councils. It's 6 o'clock and 7 o'clock. First of all, we're doing Christchurch. Secondly, we're doing Highcliffe. But do come to all of them. But I hope you do come along. I think that's all I really want to say. It's been a very interesting couple of months. Thank you. Right, the leader of the council. Would you like to make your announcements?
Just to say that the Deputy Leader and myself continue to work with the Shadow Executive in attendance of their meetings, together with the Task and Finish Group meetings and the Delivery Board meetings. The ongoing process.
Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Right, now I have great pleasure in inviting the Chief Executive and Town Clerk to make any announcements. I think the announcement that is here is announcement enough. But David.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and indeed that's where I was going to start. It's good to be back, as they say. It's been quite a while I've been away, and I am grateful for all the messages and kind wishes that you sent me when I was in a bit of pain for quite a while. So that's genuinely appreciated. As you well know, we've got an interesting few months ahead of us, so it's timely that I'm back. And clearly, from my point of view, the focus now is about the staff, and it's about making sure the staff transfer to whichever of the new councils they're on the TUPE list for, and that we do that in the best possible manner. Both programmes, as you know, have HR work streams, and that's fine, but we need to do what we need to do at this end to make sure that they transfer in the most positive way to give them the best chance for their future, whatever that might hold, and I'm sure you'll give me every support in doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Right, so we're down already to item 6 on your agenda. Questions by members of the public. One question has been submitted by a member of public on this occasion. Hang on, turn over the pages. Are you all right, Peter?
Yes, thank you.
Good.
Sorry, Madam Mayor.
This is a question from Mr. Brian Case. Would you like to come to the microphone, Mr. Case? Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, councillors.
Yes, thank you.
Can I ask Councillor Flagg that following the recent restructure of the council's committee membership, and in light of the more recent decision by Mr. Chris Loader, Dorset Area Chairman of the Conservative Group, to overturn the original censure motion where he referenced, and I quote, that there was a lack of credible evidence, will the council leader now act on Mr. Loader's final recommendation that the 9 councillors concerned, Councillors Claire Bath, Bernie Davis, Travis Fox, Wendy Grace, Vicky Hallam, Ray Nottage, Lyle Smith, Sue Spittle and Trevor Watts were being reinstated to their original committees from which they were removed, so that Christchurch can benefit from the experience they have in their contributions to those committees. I further add that Mr. Loader's recommendation, if Mr. Loader's recommendations are not to be implemented, could it then be argued that local infighting is being prioritised over the wider interest of Christchurch residents?
Thank you, Mr. Case. We have a response from the Leader of the Council, Councillor Flagg. Thank you, Mr. Councillor Flagg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Case, part of your question deals with the censure of 9 councillors, which is a party political matter and not the business of this council. With regards to Christchurch Borough Council committees, I would refer you to the agenda item 4, minute 115. The notice of motion was tabled in accordance with the Constitution, Procedural Rules 12 and 15. The motion was carried with members voting 13 to 8 with 1 abstention. The committees consist of experienced councillors, all working for the best interests of Christchurch residents as we move towards the new unitary authority. Mr. Loader's recommendation that you refer to does not form part of the business of this council. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Mr. Case, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, please. Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for that. I'll have another read of that, as they say. Therefore, would you therefore agree with me that because the BCP Unitary Authority is now in place, less than 6 months away, do you agree with me that you should encourage all your fellow Christchurch councillors to work collaboratively with all the other BCP councillors or shadow authorities, councillors across the conurbation, again for the future benefits and interests of Christchurch?
Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As far as I'm concerned, all the members on this council are working towards the new unitary authority, both on the as I mentioned earlier, the shadow executive and the shadow authority, and the overview and scrutiny committee, which are now involved with the process of moving forward to April 2019. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you very much, Mr. Case. And as usual, you'll get a copy of the answers, and you'll get a copy of the answer in printed form. Thank you. Thank you very much. Members, item 7, petition by members of the public. I'm advised there are no petitions on this occasion. Item 8, questions by members of the council. We've had 2 questions, but both from Councillor Bungay. So, Councillor Bungay, would you like to ask your first question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Having revisited the questions, I decided that I will incorporate them together because I think the answer that needs to be made will need to incorporate both questions. So I will go through the 2 to start.
Thank you, Councillor.
Following the letter to Councillor Walton of Poole Borough Council, Chairman of the new Shadow Executive from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, which indicated that a 7-year council tax harmonisation period would be the maximum period allowed, although a shorter time could be acceptable should all parties agree. What response will this council be making to both the Minister and the Shadow Executive? Question 2. The letter also appears to make the provision of allowing for harmonisation of council tax from day one of the new unitary of Christchurch, Poole and Bournemouth by taking an average of council taxes paid across the area of all three authorities and setting that as the base rate from day one. This would appear to have little or no effect on the income of the new unitary, and it could in fact give a slight increase in the projected figures. It would also have the desired effect for Christchurch residents of a considerable reduction in council tax of the new authority for the first year. There is apparently would be no loss of income for the new authority. This appears to me to be a win-win situation for all. Is the leader able to assure members that this council will be preparing figures to support the case of harmonisation for day one, using the Minister's letter as a base, and making representations to the Minister by the closing date of the 9th of November, in an effort to ensure that Christchurch residents do not have to subsidise Poole and Bournemouth councils for the next 7 years? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll ask the Leader to respond. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Bungay, the policy position of the Council has not changed, in that council tax harmonisation should take place from day one of the new unitary authority. Both the Deputy Leader and myself have taken this approach since attending the Shadow Executive and Task and Finish Group meetings. Detailed council tax harmonisation modelling was presented to the Shadow Executive Joint Committee meeting of the 16th of April 2018, which included a weighted average amount at option D. However, only options C, G, J, M and N were considered as meeting the Joint Committee's resolution. Minute 49 of that meeting sets out the decision that was made, and it is noted that Councillors David Flagg and Trish Jameson requested that their dissent from the decision be recorded. It is my understanding that copies of the modelling presented at the meeting were included in the presentation to the Minister. I will once again write to the Minister to explain that whilst the Shadow Executive may agree to a 7-year harmonisation period, the policy of this Council remains the same. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Bungay, do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It would appear then from the answer that although the Minister has given the opportunity for harmonisation from day one, it is probably the Bournemouth and Poole objective not to go for that option, as it was discounted, and go for possibly the 7-year itch, which means that Christchurch is going to have to subsidise those two authorities for the next 7 years. Can the chairman, or leader, sorry, I apologise, can the leader please ensure that all members see any copy of correspondence that is sent to the Minister and to the Shadow Authority regarding this matter? Thank you.
Thank you for your supplementary. Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will indeed ensure that any letter and accompanying correspondence will be issued to all members. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Item 9, members, committee minutes. To accept the minutes. May I have a proposer and a seconder? I'm looking at the Leader and the Deputy Leader. To receive the minutes of the committee meetings for the last cycle of meetings. You've got them within the council agenda. Councillor Flagg.
Happy to propose as set out, Madam Mayor.
And Councillor Jameson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Happy to second as set out.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I note that under the Licensing Committee, the last meeting, I just want to calm members' nerves. The concern was raised over PCSI, which means Police Community Support Investigators, for those of us who don't know. that Christchurch wasn't represented by PCSOs. Can I just point out that Christchurch is part of the Eastern Division of Dorset Police, and there are 3 such officers within the Eastern Division, and they can cover Christchurch when needs arise. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. That's very, very helpful. Councillor Neil.
As we're only accepting the minutes, or they're going to be approved at the next committee meeting, there is a typo error. I didn't say PCSI. I said PCSO at the point, so someone got it a little bit confused.
Okay.
Well, I'm amazed, Madam Mayor, that we even knew about PCSIs. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That was rather confusing, but I'm sure very helpful. Are there any other members wishing to speak before we can I have a show of hands for acceptance? Thank you. Councillor Bungey, are you abstaining? Thank you.
Unanimous, Madam.
Unanimous. Thank you. Just a bit of an effort, wasn't it? Thank you very much. Item 10. Change the political group membership and allocation of seats. Now, I'm going to invite Councillor Flagg to present the report. Councillor Flagg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wish to make an alteration to the recommendation this evening that's in front of members, and the recommendation is as follows: that Councillor Mrs Derham Wilkes be replaced on the committees as follows: the Community Committee, Councillor Mrs Dedman; Ethical Governance Committee, Councillor Hall; and Resources Committee, Councillor Geary.
Thank
and
you.
I believe I have a seconder in the Deputy Leader.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I was just going to say that. So we've got a proposer there and a seconder. Councillor Jameson.
Oh, sorry, I didn't switch it off before. Madam Mayor, happy to second this.
Right, members, does anybody wish to speak to this item? Councillor Nobbit.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sorry, I really haven't kept pace with this change, and I should have done. Is the councillor unwell?
I'm sorry, Councillor Nottage. To whom do you address that? The councillor.
The councillor that is referred to in that is caused the change to political group membership and allocation seats.
Thank you, Councillor Nottage. I think I'll ask the Leader to answer that.
Madam Mayor, I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know whether Councillor Mrs Derham Wilkes is ill or not. So I don't know if...
Thank you, thank you, Leader. Any more questions on this? Oh, Councillor Nottage, would you wish to come back?
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I didn't explain myself adequately. Maybe I can put it in a different way then. What has created this situation? I assumed, wrongly, that perhaps the councillor was unwell and she couldn't maintain her duties. Is there another reason for this?
Councillor Nottage, I think the Leader might come back, but I think it's in the recommendation, isn't it? In the report, I mean.
Madam Mayor, it's set out in the agenda item as to the change of the political balance on the council.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Nottage, I really don't know the personal circumstances behind this. I think we'll leave it at that. Thank you. Would any other member wish to speak? Put any more around the table? Councillor Loft, do you wish to speak, or are you just waving? You're just waving your order paper. Thank you. That's right. Can we put the proposal to the vote then, please, members? All those in favour? Not everybody.
Madam Mayor.
Those against?
None.
Abstentions?
And what?
Councillor Nottage, thank you. Are we going to have a change of agenda order here? Right, thank you. Right, members, we're going to have a change to the order of the agenda. We're going to go to 13? Yes, okay. So we're going to go to item 13 on your agenda papers, and this is the notice of motion regarding council tax harmonisation. Right, have we all got this? While this is being passed round, I'll explain that the remaining item on the agenda contains exempt information. So, however, before we move to exclude the press and the public, I have agreed to allow the notice of motion to be heard as a matter of urgency, which will be considered at this point. Members will have before them a copy of the motion, or they will in a minute, which has been published also on the website. Thank you. I think everybody's got a copy now that needs a copy. Councillors, I'm going to invite Councillor Jones to present and propose the notice of motion to be dealt with as an urgent business item. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, members of Council. Since this whole procedure was first mooted, believe it or not, 3 years ago, one of the biggest sticking points was always going to be, how do you fit together the financial positions of a number of councils, some of whom have been, as we have, financially responsible, some of whom have perhaps not been quite so financially responsible and have not raised their council tax. We all know, as we have sat here from time to time in the various budget debates, that we have put up our council tax. We have not always taken advantage of the last government's council tax freeze, and the reason that we've done it was that we did not want to face our residents with a huge cliff of an increase when we hit the end of the line. Now, this largely came about during the previous administration, and that was a responsible measure that we should increase the council tax. The way that things have turned out is that every ratepayer in Christchurch, every council taxpayer in Christchurch, is going to be penalised because we have been responsible. Dorset County Council has been responsible. But other councils with whom we are now going to be mated have not. So, we have to say, what are the consequences going to be? What are the options? Well, the law always used to be, if it's a new council, you cannot have different tax rates in the same council. On every previous unitary authority that I have been able to discover, and I've looked at a lot, it's been day one harmonisation. New council, new authority, new rates. So, for some reason, we have now this council tax harmonisation, and there have been various procedures, and we know that Future Dorset, the proposal on that which that was built, said 20 years. So we're down to just about a third of that now. So there's one hole there in the financial basis, but it's a choice.
we're told there's difficulties in the way of fitting 3 councils together. Over the other side of the county, they're going to do it on day 1. So where's the difference? The difference is Bournemouth and Poole. So if we were in the position that we went for a day 1 harmonisation, yes, we might indeed see a reduction in our council tax. Other authorities might see a sharp rise. And I'm afraid I cannot help but think that there is a political calculation in here that certain voters in another authority may not be entranced at the thought of seeing their council taxes rise sharply. And of course, there's a small formality of elections. So, I'm asking the council to note, which we're going to do anyway, we're going to say that we note that, again, the consequences of a 7-year harmonisation are that we are going to be subsidising the other 2 authorities for 7 years. Dress it up as you wish, try the financial wizardry, whatever you can. Blind people with figures, but it will come out that Christchurch residents will be paying more for the identical service. Okay, so we look at this and we say there is an alternative, as close as the edge, I think, of Councillor Phipps's property, because Dorset, as I said, are going for day 1. So let us urge the Shadow Executive to be fair, to continue what the Leader and the Deputy have been trying to do, to get this done fairly. And let's ask our councillors, when we meet as a Shadow Authority, those who wish to show responsibility to Christchurch, those who wish to reflect truly the interests of our residents, let's all raise this matter. Madam Mayor, I know you have timed me impeccably fairly, unlike a recent meeting I was at, and so I will terminate my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And I believe Councillor Phipps is going to second this notice of motion. Thank you, Councillor Phipps.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, councillors. I am happy to second this motion. In my opinion, this proposed tax harmonisation period of up to 7 years is wholly unfair. This will be yet another forcible imposition on Christchurch. Against the wishes of the majority of Christchurch residents, as proved by a local referendum, and against the wishes of the majority of Christchurch councillors, Christchurch has been forced to become a minority partner in a new unitary authority. Now, to add insult to injury, Christchurch residents are being told that they're going to have to sponsor the majority partners of Bournemouth and Poole for around the next 7 years by paying higher council tax than their residents. The situation is just not fair. Having been forced to join the new authority, why can't our council tax be reduced to come into line with Bournemouth and Poole, rather than us paying more for 7 years? Of course, we know the reason why. If that was to happen, the new council would not have enough money. In other words, I believe Christchurch is being used as a cash cow to sponsor 2 other larger areas. Their figures don't add up unless we pay more. Christchurch residents, as part of the new single authority, this will be one authority, will have to pay more than Bournemouth and Poole residents in council tax for around the next 7 years, just for the privilege of joining a new council they voted not to join. Really a pretty absurd situation in my view. So I believe that those of us who support council tax harmonisation across the new authority from day 1, as set out in this motion, and as will be happening across the Dorset Shire Authority, We are the councillors who are really standing up for Christchurch residents, and we should make our views known at the Shadow Authority. So I'm happy to second the motion. I hope you will support it, and I reserve my rights. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Phipps. Now, members who wish to speak, I think we've got Councillor Smith first of all.
Thank you. I have two questions actually. My first question is, has this council received a copy of the letter from the Secretary of State to the Shadow Authority, and if so, will it be sharing it with the councillors? My second question is, as members of Dorset County Council, have Christchurch residents been paying exactly the same amounts as the rest of the residents across the Dorset County Council?
Yes. Can I ask the proposer of the motion if he would like to answer, or would you like the officer to answer?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I nearly donated £10 to your fund then. Can I say that I will answer as many points as possible in my summing up, but I will be very welcome if the officer would like to contribute.
Yes. Yeah, Chief Executive.
Madam Mayor, I appreciate I've only just arrived back, so I'm going to have to confer with the leader as I try to answer the first part of the question, is whether the letter that was sent to Councillor Walton has been circulated to all members. I don't believe it has. And again, we can make arrangements to do that. The second part of the question, without entering into your debate, as a matter of fact, the council tax precepts across the Dorset County area vary. The county council precept is the same, as is the police and the fire precepts, but the variation would come through the district and boroughs precept, and also the parishes, the towns and parishes. So that is the factual answer to the question.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Is it Councillor? Councillor Jameson. Councillor Patricia Jameson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, members, as a member of the Financial Strategy and Council Tax Harmonisation Task and Finish Group of the Shadow Authority, I won't repeat it, I should like to make one or two points regarding the Council Tax Harmonisation. The leader and I have stuck out for harmonisation from day one at all meetings when this matter is raised, and I have consistently asked for further consideration be given at the Task and Finish Group meetings. I am assured that Christchurch residents will not lose out on harmonisation taking place over a number of years. The figures do show that over a period of 6 or 7 years, with a freeze on Christchurch council tax residents in Band D, will, after 6 years of paying more than Bournemouth and Poole, will actually be about £1,000 better off. Now we have to decide what is the best, the saving over 6 years, or a saving each year and paying the same as residents in Bournemouth and Poole for the same services. I know which I prefer. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Neil.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to say that Janet Walton, I know I'm a member of the Shadow and Overview Committee now, but Janet Walton sent out an email with the attached letter today, this afternoon.
Thank you, Councillor.
To all members of the
thank
Shadow
you.
Executive.
Thank you, Councillor Neil. Thank you for the information. Councillor Nottage, were you indicating? Oh, okay. Any other member wishing to speak? Councillor Bungey.
I have a lot of sympathy with this motion, especially following the answer to my question. And as was said in the answer, that harmonisation from day one was looked at and totally disregarded by the Bournemouth and Poole side, and only the two Christchurch representatives pushed for it. They have consistently pushed for it, and it's been totally disregarded. Christchurch residents, as usual, have been treated with contempt by both Bournemouth and Poole, and also by the Conservative government. They've totally disregarded what residents wanted. They've given the opportunity for harmonisation from day one, and we're told it's not going to happen. So that's being disregarded. The government, quite frankly, should have said you must have harmonisation from day one. As Councillor Jones said earlier, it's very, very seldom has it happened over more than a year or 2 years, and most cases it's happened from day one. So Christchurch again is being treated with contempt, and I urge residents in Christchurch to think carefully how they vote next year, and perhaps even in Poole and Bournemouth they should consider very carefully what happens over the next few years. And there was a very telling point at the shadow council meeting the other day when it's been recorded, my comments as to the behaviour of some of the councillors there, but a question was put, and the answer from the vice chair of the shadow councillor from Poole was quite frank. The reason for the merger is Poole is broke and can no longer pay the services, so they need the merger. So again, that was a matter of public record. She stated it. Where does that leave council taxpayers in Christchurch to know Poole is broke and that's the sole reason for the merger as far as they're concerned? Bournemouth, we know, have got problems as well. And, you know, it comes back to our original argument from day one. This is not an amicable joining together, and it's not an equal joining together. Christchurch will be a minority player in the new authority with 10 councillors. Bournemouth will have the majority of councillors and control the new authority. And, you know, we've seen how we've been treated over the last 18 months, 2 years of talks and negotiations, and I can't see Christchurch coming out of this with any benefits or better services in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mrs Jones.
Madam Mayor, members of council, as far as I'm concerned, this is a question of natural justice. We are forming, some of us against our wishes, a new authority. When we put forward the proposition, we'll let Poole and Bournemouth join together if they wish, but we don't want to go with them. The answer basically was, well, sorry, but we won't do it without you. So here we are, for the main reluctant members of this new authority, but treated, as far as I can see, with contempt. When we were at the Shadow Authority meeting the other week, one or two of the members spoke of this wonderful time that was coming when their city by the sea would come into existence, something that they had been working for and looking for. And now there in the future was the idea of this city of the sea. Well, we would be part of that city of the sea, but we would be the ones who aren't paying the same as the others. So what they're asking for is us to join debt-free with assets, not taking out one loan after another, not closing down the various facilities like conveniences. Instead, we are a borough that's looked after its own. And here we are saying, having to say to our citizens, well, yes, you've got this exciting new future in front of you, but it's an exciting new future where, I'm sorry, but you will be paying more for the same services, or even less. Our Red House Museum, I note in the report, it said that at the Red House Museum Committee meeting, in the future, the new authority may not think quite the same about contributing. They'll honour it for the first year. So here we are. And all we're asking for is natural justice. As members know, I represent a ward where people do not have great incomes, but they are going to be paying a lot more tax, relatively speaking, than those who are living in luxury in our two neighbouring partnering boroughs.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Any more members wishing to speak to the motion? Councillor Lofts.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. People perhaps think that I haven't been here all that long. Well, I've lived in the borough for 42 years. Didn't spend a terrible lot of time in the borough early on because I was floating all over the place. But the time from 1970 till the structure more or less that we have now, and we got put into Dorset, I spent a lot of time in Southampton, and as is my normal practice, I was an avid reader of the local press, and I would totally agree with members. There are times now when I can't remember anything from half an hour ago, but I'm sure my memory is adjusted so that I can remember the early 70s as though they were yesterday. And at that time, we, in what is now and was then almost exactly the same Christchurch Borough, but largely in Hampshire, got put into Dorset because Dorset needed more money. That's my memory of what happened at the time. For people who live here and are old enough, can say that I'm wrong or whatever. So central government has form on the matter, and the form started not in the 1970s but the 1960s, when the then Prime Minister, who was at that time my local Member of Parliament, took it into his head to call a general election. Now, they are things of a long time ago. I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, that I remember them, perhaps. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. That was very illuminating. Members, anybody else wishing to speak before I ask the proposer to sum up? Councillor Smith, you wish to come back.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. There were deficits in all of the upper tier councils, not just Bournemouth and Poole, also in Dorset, and that is why these mergers were talked about. These deficits are not going to reduce unless we take action, and that is why we are doing this. I welcome the fact that the council tax of the Christchurch residents, excluding the parish and town council precepts, will not go up for 7 years. What I think is a must is that regardless of when council tax is harmonised, we must ensure that councillors that wish to show responsibility to our residents work to ensure that service levels are maintained and not cut. And whilst I believe that the best way forward for the new authority is to have as little council tax foregone as possible, I accept that harmonisation on day one would be preferable to the residents of Christchurch.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Oh, Councillor Bath.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When I was first made aware of this motion, I've asked the Financial Director a few questions to get in my own mind where we are and how this new authority can work for the best of everybody within the conurbation, which is what I believe we should be doing alongside representing our residents, who are our main priority and the people that we have been elected to represent. My views have always been that I have chosen the best path for our residents, recognising the financial constraints that Dorset County Council was under and why Dorset County Council chose to go with the LGR recommendations in order to provide frontline services to our residents and maintain those services. And so therefore my opinion on this has not changed. Certain councillors seem to have conveniently forgotten the fact that we actually only represent in Christchurch 11% of the council tax spend. The rest was Dorset County Council, who looked at the bigger picture, looked at providing adult social care and children's services in the future, and realised it was unaffordable in the current model. In order to harmonise our council tax from day one, the council tax foregone by the new authority would be 30 million over 5 years. That 30 million is 30 million that our residents across the conurbation would not have to provide those frontline services to our residents. In order for us to try to reach some sort of compromise, which I believe the Secretary of State and central government have looked at, it is never going to be easy. It's always going to be a compromise. And I believe entering into a new organisation where we should all be working together for the common good of all of our residents across the conurbation, we shouldn't only look at our own front door and look at our own residents in Christchurch, many of whom are very vulnerable, as the councillor has stated. But for those of you, sadly very few, who turned up to the briefing last week on children's services and saw the deprivation, which is not only in Christchurch, it's across the conurbation, and the very difficult decisions that will have to be made with regards to financing children's services and adults' social care. We have to be realists in this, and we have to understand there has to be a compromise across the conurbation. The other council taxpayers in the other areas will be having to come up to meet us, but at the same time, our residents will have a freeze on council tax for 7 years, representing a saving of £1,000 on a council tax D property. £1,000 saving compared to what our council taxpayers were going to face had we remained in an unsustainable and unviable future in our old system. So I would say to residents, yes, I will stick up for you because I want the best for Christchurch residents, and that's why I've looked at the bigger picture and the affordability of services. And yes, I will vote with this because I would like our council tax to be harmonised on day one in order to get the best deal for Christchurch. But we have to recognise the bigger picture and look across the whole conurbation for what we're going to do for our residents, who will be one conurbation in the future, trying to do the best for all of their residents in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bath. Councillor Nottage, you're indicating. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I must admit I had a great deal of trepidation when I received notification of this urgent business via my private email. This for a number of reasons, not the least being some of which we've heard this evening. This not the least being that I seem to remember advising members at the last council meeting that following agreement with the BCP shadow executive, which includes the leader and the deputy leader, as you've heard, a decision had been reached in respect of harmonisation of council tax for the BCP Unitary Council, and a letter had been agreed and sent to SOS. I and other members were not made privy of that letter or its contents. Similarly, I make reference to item 1 of the urgent business, which refers to the letter from the SOS, presumably in reply, and where the leader of this council was included in the distribution. And yet again, I and other members have not even up to this meeting been party to its contents. I understand the leader received this letter on the 17th of October. So how on earth can we expect this to be considered as urgent business? Item 2 of this so-called urgent business refers to the considerable financial disadvantage to Christchurch residents, and yet we know that the Christchurch contingent on the executive were party to the decision. We've heard from members, just heard from the member of the potential savings to Christchurch residents, and they will enjoy that over the next 7 years. So I say to the leader and deputy leader, well done on negotiating those savings. We should give you credit for it. As far as the subsidising the rest of the authority, can I remind members, and especially county members, that following the PwC report 3 years ago, it became absolutely clear that for years and years, Christchurch rate payments to the county were in excess by £1 million more than the net revenue expenditure for Christchurch per annum. As I remember, the report was dismissed as faulty by the proposer of today's urgent business. We now know this has been proven by the latest disaggregation figures. I find it puzzling that the proposer did nothing, absolutely nothing at that stage, despite being highly placed in county and indeed had a Christchurch colleague actually on the county cabinet. In any case, this issue is not just about the price. It's about the service associated with that price. That's what I find so offensive about the position being promoted by the proposer and his supporters. No consideration of what is going to represent value for money for our residents, for potentially enhanced and effective public services, that we should be engaged in describing, negotiating through various committees with our colleagues from Poole and Bournemouth. We have councillors with huge experience in working to sustain growth and economy. They are sidelined. We are not engaging in discussions about how we enhance our natural environment, but we should be. We have councillors with exemplary experience in the issues of housing, again sidelined. Community safety, community well-being, health, highways and transport. I could go on, but no bringing together of key issues, no involvement or visioning outcomes to the benefit of all our residents. Just urgent business from a proposer that has lost the argument and sees benefit to residents resulting from opposing that which has been decided by Conservative parliamentary law. And how disappointing to see so few Christchurch councillors attending 2 seminars arranged by the BCP shadow team, one on adult and social care and the other on children's services, subjects which we as district councillors have very little involvement with. But in future will likely absorb over 50% of the council's budget. Madam Mayor, I attended the Dorset Conservative Conference last Saturday, and following his presentation spoke to a young man who 10 years ago, when LGR in Wiltshire was adopted, and as a district councillor was opposed to the process. I asked him to look back and tell me how and when he realised his opposition could go no further. His pragmatic answer was as expected. He said, when I realised I had lost the argument, then I decided to make the system work for my residents. 10 years on, although he admits his work and responsibility as a councillor is far more consuming and demanding, his support for the unitary system of local government was clearly described in his and his colleagues' presentation. That, Madam Mayor, is what every member of this council should be doing now. The decision has been made. Moving on, making this work to the benefit of all our constituents. I will not be supporting this urgent business. I find it divisive and cannot see how it benefits the task in hand in any way. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nottage. I'm just going to make one little interjection here because of meetings, 2 seminars have been mentioned. And can I just say on behalf of several borough councillors who couldn't come to at least one of the seminars that we did have a borough meeting here for the charity that we support, and it was impossible, sadly, to be in 2 places at one time, and I share your sadness that we couldn't make that seminar. So yes, it was very unfortunate, but Christchurch Borough Council in that instance had to come first. Any more speakers on this topic? Can I does Mrs. Phipps want to, Councillor Phipps want to speak or not? You've spoken. Councillor Jones, do you want to sum up? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, we've had a very interesting debate, and for a time I thought that the question of the argument was going to go by default, because for some reason the proponents of the shall we say the revised system of local government seemed unnaturally silent. And I'm glad they have spoken, because I'm glad that despite the words of the last speaker, 2 of them have now said that when this comes to the authority, as I can guarantee it will, that they will support it. And I look forward to seeing their hands raised in company with other Christchurch councillors for a day one harmonisation. Whether that will endear them to their colleagues in Greater Bournemouth, I know not. I'll pick up 1 or 2 points here. The crucial difference between the sort of the fairness of the, oh yes, we're going to have that saving, we all know, because purely by coincidence, that freeze on council tax was announced just before the vote on the Christchurch referendum. And I'm very glad to say our residents immediately saw through it. Because after all, I seem to hear the words of Joseph Stalin echoing down the ages. Who compels us to keep the promises we make? Yes, indeed. Councillor Beasley may indeed promise us a freeze. And I shall watch, if I'm spared, I shall watch every budget speech for the next 7 years for the, oh, I'm sorry, but we have to raise your council tax, Christchurch. That's not the point that was said. Very eminently, very effectively. It's a matter of natural justice. You get the same service, you pay the same. Why then can't the Bournemouth and Poole agree to put their council tax up to the same level as it's actually costing to provide those services? And the answer is very simple. They're scared to death. As Margaret Thatcher said, they're fright. They do not want to face their electors. Every single step of this policy has been designed to keep it out of the hands of voters who might conceivably object. Only in Christchurch did we actually ask people what they think. Now, again, we've talked about Councillor Bundy, and I'll come back to that in a minute, about when you're broke, you should be taking economies. You should be restructuring your finance. You shouldn't be looking at buying a shopping centre from which immediately after you've spent ratepayers' money buying it and committed a debt which this residents of this borough will have to pay off. And then the main site, the main facility says, oh, sorry guys, we're going to close. What wonderful financial management. I will indeed pick up on what Councillor Lobster said. Yes, it was indeed this unitary system, this big is beautiful, and we all know what's wrong with that, is a product of the 1960s and the Redcliffe Maud report, which the civil servant involved took great pleasure in telling me was a wonderful thing, and this is good news. Yes. One other point, we should be working together. We should be working for the benefit of this borough. All of the councillors on the new authority should be working together for the benefit of everybody. Am I a little cynical in thinking that actually, from the capital ideas that have come forward so far, like the monorail that will go to Christchurch Airport but won't come anywhere near Christchurch, are actually for the benefit of another part of the conurbation? So, and now to the final point, final speaking, which I said earlier on, smoke and mirrors. The last speaker has been to the Gordon Brown School of baffling the electorate. Yes, if you want fairness, you put the council tax up to where it should be. What a wonderful, yes, the services in Bournemouth. It's not Dorset's children's services. I'm sorry. Perhaps we should adjourn, Chairman, for this attack of laughing gas to expire.
Thank you, Councillor. You're getting quite close to the end of your time.
Thank you.
I'd like to wind
Which
up.
is this. We've had comments on division from the expert in causing division. We've had comments about a county cabinet.
Point of order, Madam Chair. Can we have a much more gentle discussion, so that we do not insult our colleagues? It's just not unnecessary, isn't it?
Yes. Thank
Through
you,
you,
Councillor.
Chairman, through you, Madam Mayor, and I will pay my £10, unlike some people.
Right, thank you, Councillors. Can we just keep to the subject?
I will
Councillor
stick to
Jones,
one
do you
point
want to
and say,
wind up?
I hope that the councillor will watch. If he wants a lesson in insulting, he should look at his remarks about me. So finally, yes, we have a way forward. We should be looking at working together. So if we're all working together, if we're all working to the same objective, let's all pay the same for the same services, even if that means Bournemouth and Poole have to stick their hands further in their pockets.
Thank you, Councillor Jones.
Madam Mayor, I move.
Thank you. Never go to the vote. Members, we've had a good discussion on this motion. Now, I invite all those who support it to raise their hands. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Those against?
None.
Abstentions?
3.
Thank you, councillors. We move on to item 11. Councillor, thank you, councillor. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Davis. Thank you very much. We'll just give you a chance to leave the room. Item 11. Item 11, councillors. The next item, if members wish to discuss and ask a question on it, it will be necessary to go into a closed session. So I'm assuming that we will want to ask questions. Can I have a steer from the floor? Yes. Yeah. Right, thank you. So it's recommended that in view of the nature of the business to be transacted, it's likely that if members of the public were present during this following item, which you have on your pink paper, that there would be disclosure to them of exempt information as described in the category indicated. And we advise that they therefore be excluded from the meeting in accordance with section 100A brackets 4 of the Local Government Act. Can I have a proposer so to do? We've got 2 proposers, thank you. And 3 seconders. Thank you very much, members. Can I just ask members of the public to leave the room? Thank you. but as yet I haven't got the mace bearer in, so we can't go. I don't want to step on the badge.